Hi everyone, this is Kovid back with another episode of Beyond the Code by Typo. Today with us we have a special guest. He's currently VP of Engineering at PDAX, which is one of the best crypto and digital asset exchange in Philippines. He's also known as organizer of eHeads, a fellowship for local engineering leaders. His trajectory of the career has revolved around mainly helping others work better. So he's a passionate tech leader with a lot of compassion and empathy. Welcome to the show, Glenn. Happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Great, Glenn. So before we start off and learn some great stuff from you, from your experience, we would love to know a little bit more about you, like your hobbies, your day-to-day activities. So quickly, if you could introduce us with yourself and tell us about your life defining moments and some of the best experiences that you have had so far, your hobbies, how do you unwind your day? I think that would be great.
So probably my most life-defining experience was when I discovered TechCrunch before. So when TechCrunch was just starting out, I was just a usual rank and file worker in a big company. I wasn't a developer at all. So when TechCrunch published like 10 ideas how to create a startup, these are the ideas that they thought would boom. I found one that was particularly something that Filipinos here where I am from could do, which is some sort of labor arbitrage. So it's called outsourcing now. It's very popular across the world. But at that time, we did not have the technology to make it easy. So I had to build my own forum. I had to create my own website and do all the other stuff needed to get that business up and running. For my hobbies, I'm actually an avid fan of cars, and I'm also a foodie, as they call it. So I like trying new foods. Technology-wise, I still read like hacker news to keep up to date, but I also mix it up with some newsletters to supplement my knowledge in engineering management, and I share my learnings in my LinkedIn. That's maybe a quick run through of what I've done. Yeah.
Yeah, that really helps. Thank you so much for this intro. And coming to the main section, the main discussion, like when we want to learn something from engineering leaders like you, I think the best would be to start with your current role, wherein if you could just tell us what do you do as a VP of engineering at PDAX, what does PDAX exactly do, and what are your day-to-day challenges? I think let's get started from there first.
So as VP of engineering, I handle most of the people side in the engineering management role. So my focus is really on people and the processes that enable them to work better. So right now, one of my initiatives in the company is to roll out DORA metrics and SonarQube. In my day-to-day, I actually do one-on-ones. I join meetings with engineers, and I also help plan out what, since we're at the start of year, I'm helping plan out what we're going to do for 2024.
So when you say you are planning what is going to go out for 2024, I mean, this is basically what a VP engineering would be doing, like connecting the business to the tech side and like enabling the teams to be aware of what should we build and what strategy should we follow. So I think this is one interesting piece, and this is one of the challenging things of leadership role where you bring in the business and align it with the technical strategy. How do you exactly do that? And if you could share some of your experiences with aligning your teams to that technical strategy, which ultimately aligns with the business goals. So, how do you do that?
So first, I need to understand the business goals for this year. That's going to be actually rolled out next week. But right now, it's pretty clear what our direction will be business wise. So, in my end, I have to translate that into something that will help the engineering team with the help of product, of course. In our organization, product is separate from engineering. So, we align ourselves with each other so that the features that we build are according to that roadmap from the executives. And aside from that, I also have to make sure that we keep code quality high, because one of the things that I'd like to implement is that we build features more quickly. So that's enabled by better code, which actually is a very good flywheel that contributes to the speed of development as well. So we can do more with less once we have better code.
That totally makes sense. When it comes to aligning the team with these goals, it's always a challenge for making the developers intuitively or naturally align with these goals. So, what exactly would you do in your meetings or your day to day work to ensure that these people are on day to day level aligned with the business goals and the work that they are doing? Because it's always a secondary effect, right? Like, developer builds the code, ships it, and then ultimately they see the results when the features are being adopted or your system is getting
Yeah.
faster. So it's always a second order effect. So on day to day, how do you make sure that they relate to that second order effect goals and get rewarded with that actually?
So when we're building things, aside from the regular, I think most of your audience would be familiar with the stand-ups and the catch-ups with product and the entire team. So that's part of it. But another part is I always reiterate during our own engineering meetings why we're doing these things. Because we need to connect that with their own motivations. Each person has a different motivation. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that most of our engineers are motivated by growth and learning, as well as achieving something that's impactful. So we share metrics in our meetings, we share how the users are accepting their features, and we also want them to like connect the goals of whatever they're doing with their own personal goals. So we're a fintech company that's focused on wealth, increasing wealth, and most of our engineers are actually crypto traders as well. So we roll out initiatives like helping them learn more about crypto and also how to handle their own funds. So that's also something that we strive to do in PDAX.
I think that's the best thing that you can have. Like the people who are building the
Yeah.
tool for a user, they themselves are a user of that product and they understand the problem statement, they understand the solutioning around it. I think you answered the question really well here, and you're lucky to have that kind of a motivation because in a lot of cases, when people are building, let's say, some B2B products, the developers are totally disconnected with the kind of audience they have to build the product for, right? So I think you're in a good position and it's a good strategy, actually. Cool. I'll move on to the next question, Glenn. So basically, when you say that you are working with PDAX and it's a financial institution, I'm sure there are a lot of compliances and security issues coming into the picture. And being a fast moving company, you have to roll out so many features and in as less time as possible. So as a leader, how do you manage that balance? Because that is a little bit of a challenge. And when compliances come into the picture, and specifically in fintech, it's a big challenge. So how do you manage that, your velocity, while making sure that you are fulfilling all the compliances?
Yeah. Good question. Currently, there's a really like a push and pull here. So other teams, they need their central bank requirements because that's part of the regulations. But we also want to build something quickly, which is also a mandate from our CEO actually. So what we do here is we actually set aside time for those compliance stuff. And for the most part, it's not handled by the engineers themselves. I
Okay.
let the managers handle that. But for example, we need input from tech leads or engineers. We need to bake that in so that it doesn't disrupt their flow. So I'm still a big believer of giving them a maker flow, these engineers, because that's the only time where they can deliver quickly and they'll have well thought out solutions to the problems that we give them. So we don't want to interrupt that. But at the same time, we also want them to be communicative and collaborative. So I think having those stand-ups and having them work more async is actually key here so that they can contribute when they need to, but not we don't like rush them into contributing these admin tasks. Another thing is that we want to also build rapport with these other teams who are not technical, who might not understand what we're doing, so that when we're like a bit delayed when giving responses because we're working on other stuff, we can smooth things out. And that's actually another part of our like what we're doing in the company current now, some process improvement, so that these asks from external parties are handled well.
I think this is a good strategy where you are segregating their work to an extent where they don't get interrupted in the flow of work on everyday basis, but also they are aware of things that are going on and they understand the context of it so that, as you said, like when they need it, when they need to contribute in that direction, they have that context and they implement it accordingly. So yeah, I think balancing this on day-to-day level is the key here probably, because you don't know when things go more into that direction where you are interrupting them every time, and then there could be situations where they're not completely aware of what's going on the compliances side, and they end up building something which doesn't fall into the picture and they have to rework. So I think the balancing act is a must here, which I'm sure you're doing. And you joined PDAX, I think, very recently. It's most like one year or so.
Less than a year, actually.
Less than a year. Oh, all right. So I think this is also an
Yeah.
interesting piece coming in at a leadership position and building that trust with the teams, right? So this is something that I see a lot of people struggle. Like people just don't take the authority in today's world, at least. They don't just take the authority. They want to like be influenced in a very subtle, different manner from the leaders. So how are you handling this role? How are you handling building of that trust with the team in this initial year?
So when I started, I actually before I even started, I interviewed all the leaders that would be under me and I'll be working closely with, because I want to establish that initial rapport. I want to
Yeah.
know if we click, because for the most part you don't want your reports to be like going against you. So
Yeah.
you want to have some harmony. When I started, I also actually, and I still do, frequent one-on-ones, because I want to get to know them not just for their work, that my direct reports who are engineering managers. I also want to know what makes them tick, what they really like, and maybe
Yeah.
some of their interests outside of work. So that's part of it. And aside from that, for the engineers themselves, I'll be starting doing some skip level one-on-ones as well, so that I get a holistic picture of the engineering team. But when building trust with them, I'm very transparent and open about what we're going to do. So I always reiterate that our goals for this year are code quality. This is how we will be measured, and I also want people to be more learning focused this year. So I'm really hoping that that aligns with them, because one thing that I've taught recently is that you cannot give people motivation. They have their own motivations. You just have to align yourself with them so that
Yeah.
they can do their best work.
Anything you specifically follow when you join in, any basic rule or format or template that you follow, that okay, whenever I'm going into a new position as a leader, like this is something that I should continue doing for some time?
Yeah. I actually, since I've joined a few companies recently, I actually created my own 90-day, like my 90-day draft on what I should do in the first 90 days. So it's split into 30, 60, and 90. So while the goals are not that set in stone, I do want to get as much information about the organization as possible in the first 30 days, as well as talk to
Very
as
important.
many people in the organization. Yeah. So I actually go on site. We return on site already. And I need to talk to as many people, because for our companies, you have to interact with people who are not in tech, maybe some people in operations, some people in sales. So you'd want to build that rapport with them so that they understand you and you understand them when they have things that they ask from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that template has been very useful for me. There's actually a book out called First 90 Days, I think, that I used as my basis.
Perfect. Perfect. Great. Glenn, Last thing which I want to touch on with you in this discussion is something that you just mentioned. We have taken up as an initiative, set up the DORA metrics. So DORA metrics is probably one aspect that I want to understand, but broadly, I want to understand what's your way of measuring success of an engineering team. Like, if your team is doing good, how do you define that for the team, and how do you make sure that everyone is aligned on those KPIs and metrics, maybe DORA metrics, and what all goes into setting up that momentum for the team so that everyone is motivated towards those. They just don't feel that they are under a microscope when you are talking about KPIs. They should naturally feel to work on those KPIs when they are working on day-to-day level. So I just want to understand this whole piece from you.
So one of our, I guess, our rallying cry this year is to be better engineers. So I'm pretty sure most engineers want to be better. So DORA metrics, I also tell them that this is not actually some sort of measurement that we use just for that sake or to like rank you. I want to use it to really create better engineers because when you follow the metrics, you'll naturally hit roadblocks. Engineers love problem solving. So this is one way to like attack that part of the brain that loves feedback. It's a very quick way to reinforce the feedback loop. That and SonarQube, which is also an automated way to collect metrics. So people love gaming, and we've seen that gaming is very, very effective in producing behaviors that we want. And this is one way for them to really see if they're doing well, they're publishing clean code, they're creating code that has no bugs, no vulnerabilities. So we want that. And also, it's a team metric more than an individual metric because the emphasis of DORA is really on teams. I want
Yeah,
them to be more collaborative. So if it fails, we're not singling out one person. I'd rather tell the team, hey, team, you're not doing well. Help each other out, raise these metrics so that we can deliver better products to our customers.
right. Makes sense. Apart from building this first level alignment of the team towards these metrics, what other challenges did you see while implementing these success metrics for the team? And any specific example? So I'm not sure if you have implemented it yet or not, but let's say if you're looking at implementing it, what would be your go-to strategy? What would be those one or two important metrics that you would be tracking? And how again you would bring that alignment with the team that, okay, these are the right metrics that we should be focusing on right now.
So we're actually in the process of implementing these metrics. We've ranked them accordingly. One thing that really stands out that I'd like to measure is the reliability of our code. So that's automatically measured by SonarQube. So one thing that I really emphasize here, one of the roadblocks, sorry, that we've come across is that if you're using systems, different systems for like CI/CD or another company for your repos and maybe another company for your servers, it might be best if you streamline these first because that's one of the challenges that we had. We had to string them together and DORA metrics is ideally collected real time. So for now, we're not collecting it real time, but if, for example, everything that you have is in AWS, it might be simpler, or everything you have is in maybe an Atlassian, that'd be simpler. And probably one of the people's side challenges of implementing metrics is actually getting them to integrate, especially if you have lots of repos.
Yeah.
So having time for them to do that, that's usually the challenge. Do they do the features or do they do these integrations? So I have to work with product, say that we need to slot this in. Maybe you can slot this in like before the sprint or during the sprint so that we can start collecting the metrics because we can only act upon the metrics once we've collected them. And
Yeah.
we're actually at that just at that part
Okay.
right now.
Yeah.
So the next phase would be creating a plan how to improve those metrics.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet, but we don't want to plan ahead because that might involve, we say that this is wrong, but our metrics would say that I actually we're doing okay here. So we can focus on other metrics that are not up to par. So we can do our engineering efforts there. So it's more targeted and has more impact.
Yeah. I think it also makes sense. Like you cannot really jump the gun here. The whole point of
Yep.
having metrics is to first understand the problem. So if you will just say that, okay, I will pick up this metric and start working on it from today itself with the team, that might not actually align with the real improvement areas. So I think the thought process that you have right now for implementing these metrics makes a lot of sense. Like first level implementation, getting in place, getting that data in place, people looking at it regularly. And from there, you will start getting those indications where the inefficiencies lie. Just for example, if we talk about change failure rate, right? This is one of the important DORA metrics that needs to be tracked. So if in your team there are a lot of failures once you release to production, then that becomes the area of focus. And then you start working towards it, taking measures towards it. But in the beginning itself, if you say that, okay, let's start working on change failure rate, and surprisingly, your team is doing good on that metric, team would say like why we are doing it,
Yeah.
and ultimately it would lose the purpose.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense,
Yeah.
and I think it makes sense to look at it very deeply and understand at every team level that which metrics would really work out for them. It's not that for a particular team, the same metric that is working out would work for the other team also. So it's a process. I think the way you are taking it up, like phase wise, is something I would say the right way to go about it. And great. I think, Glenn, it's really nice to understand these things when you're implementing hands on. Would love to know more insights from you when you do this implementation. Maybe we can have another session, another podcast where we discuss about how you implemented those metrics and what rewards you got out of those. So great. I think it was a great talk. And before leaving, I would love for you to give parting advice to our aspiring leaders and aspiring engineering managers who are listening to this podcast, that how they should move in their career ahead.
So one of my big pushes really is, and you can see it in my LinkedIn, that I want developers to become leaders. We don't have enough engineering leaders actually, and not enough developers are interested in leading. So my advice is for people to try it out. You can pedal back if it doesn't really fit you, but it might be another way for you to grow. So try it out. Maybe in your own company, maybe you can help another startup out. And when you're going through this career journey, it's not really for you to compare yourself with others. Other people would have done pretty well, and other people might have really not progressed that quickly. But don't compare yourselves to those. Compare yourselves to what you were like maybe 1 year ago, 5 years ago. As long as you're like progressing in a good pace, I think your career as an engineering leader or an engineer would really go far.
That's really great advice. And I think the best part I felt is that you said keep on trying it with other startups and companies. So I think having that hands-on experience and being into those situations would really build that quality in you. Like the reading books or just listening to a few podcasts might give you some initial framework on how you should do it, but the real belief, I would say, comes in when you have done it hands-on multiple times probably. So great advice, Glenn. Thank you so much for this amazing discussion. I would be more than interested to talking to you again about your experiences of implementing DORA and handling your team maybe 6 months down the line, how it went down and how it went up. So let's get in touch again. Thank you for today.
Yep.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kovid. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.